This is the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. This podcast was created to be there for any individual who feels like they are at a low point in life and are confused, seemingly alone, and helpless in their situation. I am a recovering alcoholic, and I felt this way too, until I sat across the table from another addict who shared his story and made me realize that I was not alone in my struggles. My life was saved by this realization, and I hope to help anyone struggling by sharing my story to show you that you are not alone and that life can contain unbelievable riches and meaning. Welcome. I am glad you are here. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Chapter 3 Stigma Podcast. Today I'm extremely excited to bring you a conversation with a very close friend of mine, someone that I met on my very first day in rehab and who I spent an incredible amount of time with, not only in the walls of rehab, but in the weeks and months after leaving in the Boise area, and just we started our journey together in recovery. And though our paths have physically diverged over the last year or so, my guest and I have stayed incredibly close and have continued to check in on each other and been there to support each other during difficult times. So I'm honored and excited that this conversation finally came together and finally occurred. So with that, we are going to get to a podcast episode and conversation with my good friend Jeramie, where in this first part, he is going to go into incredible detail about his life, about his struggles, and ultimately about his complete loss of self and of identity that led him to checking into North Point. There are details in this podcast that, despite all the time Jeramie and I have had together, I was unaware of, or this was my first time hearing Jeramie go into those details. So, and with that, we'll get to the conversation.
You know who am I? I'm a recovering addict alcoholic, and I'm somebody who's, some people might say, living the dream, especially my move here, right? Um, and I used to say that a lot, right? Living the dream, living the dream. We all kind of say that jokingly, but right now I'm living my dream, my journey, right? Um, and I've become this passionate, caring, wanting to change, adapt. And I think that's the hardest thing, as you'll hear from the story here, is everybody's different. And I'm a firm believer that what's worked for me is what works, finding what works, right? And if it doesn't work, I'll try something else. And that's what I'm doing, is trying to be 1% better every day and just find what works. And I don't follow that standard path of AA and recovery and where I'm at, obviously. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what was the path that led you to North Point?
Where that path? Well, I go back to 1997. Just turned 19 years old. Had my first daughter, and super young. Yeah, I left my house when I was about 17. So doing the things, trying to do the right things, getting a job. Didn't finish high school. Um, but ended up getting married, and my wife was pregnant, and shoot, just barely 18 years old. Uh, and I got into drugs back then. I drank back then, but I got into drugs and found with some group of people crowds that I got in pretty heavy. and I ended up getting arrested and some drug charges and at a young age. And I came out of that. I don't remember what. It seems like a lifetime and a half ago, right? Like that's
Yeah.
so long ago. 24 some years ago.
Had your daughter been born when you were arrested?
She was born, yeah, about 2 months prior. She was born in
Okay.
August, and October 3rd, that date. uh, so it'd been a couple months, but at that time, the long story into that, things were just crazy, and a lot of drugs, people that affected that. And when she was born, I was pretty heavy into a lifestyle that I didn't know who I was at that point. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, but out of that recovering, I came out. I went to a rehab at that point, and to me, alcohol wasn't a concern. It was just the drugs I got into, right? Yeah, I was
Hmm.
drinking and doing the things, but alcohol wasn't a big deal. And of course, I was on probation and stuff after that, and couldn't get caught drinking, right? But I got custody of my daughter and my son. I had another son shortly after that. Tried to get my life together, and that's hard, man. Through
Hmm.
leaving my home, not being involved with my family, my parents, anything. So, get my kids, raising them, um, just a struggle. And I drank. I successfully got off probation. I got out of that system, and I was like a winner, right? No
Hmm.
drugs, smoke some pot here and there.
Did
Didn't
you feel in those months and years after, while you're going through probation and getting off, did you feel the pull of the drugs that had gotten you into trouble when you were 18, 19 years old? Or do you feel like you were kind of able to step away um, from that force in your life?
thinking about that from our conversations, reflecting back, I had to make a big change there too, and it wasn't this big as I've made now, but I
Yeah.
moved from one county, to another county, and I
Hmm.
had to make the move. I had to get around the people because when I got out, uh, when I got out of doing my time and rehab, I was in for a while. Um, I had to make a change, right? Because I was slipping back into it. And at that point, that age, a
Yeah.
relapse, I didn't know really.
Yeah. And you were still using alcohol without much concern at that time, right?
Yeah,
So
and I
you were
think
just were you just like really focused on the drugs that had gotten you placed in jail?
correct, correct.
Yeah.
At that point, alcohol wasn't a, right? It's like when I could, even being on probation, I go out, and we go to the bars and just get smashed and do the thing. And
Yep.
that's not a problem. I don't have a problem with
Hmm.
alcohol, right?
So then what is the time after, you get out, you kind of change your scene, move away, start establishing yourself anew. What all occurs between that point and May 15th of 23 when we met in North Point?
Ah, boy. Again, so I didn't graduate high school, right? I had custody of my kids. I'm
Hmm.
away from the drugs, get off probation, and I know I got to do something, right? I got to do something, raise my kids, raise my family. And I got into plumbing and went to a trade school, and that just fell upon me. It just came up, and I took advantage of it, and that got me to moving to Boise, Idaho, from a small town, right, in
Hmm.
Idaho that I was born and raised in, and that got me more money. That got me a better place. I got a better place to raise my kids. I got married a couple more times. I'm on my fourth marriage. We'll get that out of the way
Hmm.
now. um, but that led me to a good place, right? And I
Hmm.
still partied. I drank, but again, this is me. I felt responsible. I had the
Hmm.
jobs, right? Yes, drinking from a young age, but not a problem. Um, and then my kids got older, right, and I started young, so that responsibility of coming home and having to take care of them, get them ready for school, do all those things, that faded off. Um, and I've done a lot of reflecting and trying to figure out. We all have, right? What point was that? Did I cross that line?
Yep.
Well,
Right.
I'm sure it was a long time ago, but it catches up to you, right?
Hmm.
And honestly, I think a lot to do with the responsibilities of not having the kids, not having that young age, right? And just me and the wife and kind of doing whatever we want.
Hmm.
And one other issue with that is I've had AFib pretty much my whole life, and
Hmm.
I always knew there was a thing with my heart, a flutter, a murmur, whatever I call it, right?
Yep.
And never took care of it, never an issue. Is what it is. But that started catching up to me, and my alcohol started catching up to me, and I lost control of it, and it became alcohol was an everyday, every decision I made, whether it was on a trip or going to a party, it was all made around making sure I can have a drink,
Hmm.
and I got to a point on my 45th birthday, um, 2022, that I had, and this is a tough one here to say, but with work and COVID, yeah, uh,
Hmm.
I September 22nd is my birthday when I turned 45, and all the challenges, all the stuff of me wanting to make that change, right? I knew there was a problem at this point. I knew something
Hmm.
was going on with my body. I've had thoughts of getting in a car and getting a DUI on purpose, right?
Yep.
Somebody,
Yep.
somebody else to help me,
Yep. Kind
right?
of getting forced to address the situation that you felt creeping up
Right,
from
right.
the inside. Is that right? Yeah. That's not unusual. And like I know I was kind of feeling that too. And like you talk to people in recovery, you talk to addicts and stuff, and the amount of risk that people begin to take to, in my case, it was like I knew I was deep in a lie, and I desperately wanted to get out, and I didn't know how to get out. And so there was absolutely a sense of like I need to get caught. I, I couldn't sit down on a couch and look across at Alyssa and sit down with her and look her in the eyes and speak the truth and be honest about what was going on. I didn't have that ability, or I had so much fear of doing it that I genuinely felt the only way of getting the issue that I had with alcohol resolved was to expose it in some extreme manner, which I did and I've covered in my story. But like, yeah, that feeling that you had where it's like, I just desperately need help and I don't, you feel like you start losing out on like the options for figuring out a solution and these really extreme manners to get busted and get the issue addressed and just force it start becoming like very reasonable sounding to us, and that's like part of the illness and the insanity that comes with it.
And you look at it now, Kyle, and it's like, why couldn't, like you said, with my wife, Jen, right? Like, why couldn't I just sit there and be like, hey, this is what's going on and I need help?
Yeah.
No, the
Right.
alternative is, man, what if I just force myself to get caught doing it? Then somebody else tells me I have a problem and forces me to, like, what kind of thinking is that, right? That's not,
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
uh,
Exactly. And so for me, so much of it was driven just by fear, fear of fear of judgment, fear of facing the reality and the unknown of what it meant to live a life as an alcoholic. And in a big way, I think like the work that I'm doing here is to try to explain and to try to show people like it's not there's not much to be fearful of when it comes down to it. So you had mentioned, I want to get back to like your 45th birthday, but
Yeah.
you had mentioned, you had this AFib and you had this growing sense that something was going on with you and alcohol. Were those two things like converging on one another? Was like your drinking making your AFib noticeably worse? Were issues with your AFib like driving you to drink more? Were they becoming cyclical with each other, or how did that all kind of pair up and kind of like lead or progress to this 45th birthday?
Both of those things you said, yes.
Hmm.
The AFib, the health issues, right? So probably a year or two before that, I want to say probably the start of COVID, just before it, I think 2020 maybe. I actually called the ambulance, called 911 at the house. I was out cleaning the pool. I came in, and my heart rate, my AFib was stuck at 200 beats a minute when the
Jeez.
yeah, when fire department was the one that came on site and gave me a shot, and I could feel my lips turning blue and starting getting ready to pass out. And
Jeez.
then I'm in an ambulance, right? And I go to the hospital, and they're like, "Yeah, you had AFib," and you could see it on the chart, and they're talking about it. And um, they asked me things like, for a high heart rate, were any drugs like meth, cocaine, something to get it
Hmm.
up there? And I'm like, no drugs, which there wasn't, right?
Yep.
But in the back of my mind, I knew, I'd been drinking all day, cleaning the pool, my normal
Yep.
stuff, right?
Yep.
Drink a case of beer, hang out the house, summertime, whatever have you. And then, when I went in, they handed me they talked to me, of course. They figured out that I had alcohol in my system and
Hmm.
that AFib, and they want to give me some medication, and they hand you the packets, about drinking and, the options and all that stuff. And, at that point, that's where I reflected back to where I went to rehab for the um, drug use. Yeah. And I
Hmm.
was like, hey, in my mind, I looked at him, I'm like, yeah, I've done this before. Like, if I want to quit, I can quit. I quit drugs,
Hmm.
right? I
Right.
had that mentality stuck in my head right there at that
Yep.
point that, yeah, you can throw that shit at me, but I walked away from hard drugs, right? I
Right.
can do, if I have a problem with this, I can walk away from this.
Yeah.
And so, I got out, they gave me some medication. At that point, that really triggered this, that something was more serious, right? And yeah, I did a little research, looked into a little bit. And of course, my wife's like, drinking, they say with AFib, it causes that to be worse and,
Hmm.
flare up, what have you, to things. But I went back on my way. And,
Hmm.
after a while, taking this medication, going down the road, maybe another year or so, uh, at some point in there, Kyle, I quit taking the medication. I didn't feel a difference. It made me tired. It
Hmm.
made me draw. I still have my AFib. I'm still drinking, right? So of
Yep.
course this medication isn't right. Like,
Hmm.
and then I was at work, and about a year later, I was at work, and I felt that AFib flutter and stuck, and I felt like something was really wrong, right? And then it went right to my head. And I was at work, so I mean, I wasn't drinking at work. I had been drinking, every day, every night. But
Hmm.
I feel like I started to learn that was on the decline of when I hadn't had drink for a while. That makes sense.
Yeah. So when you were coming down, when you were detoxing, your
Yeah.
AFib would kick up.
But that
And
detox
what
wasn't days. Yeah. It turned
right.
into not drinking for 2, 3 days. You know what I mean? That detox. This
Yep.
is now my detox level is shortening.
Yeah. 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 I would always get like incredibly um, just fast heart rate and fast breathing rate, like
Hmm.
super shallow breath. And I would genuinely be concerned about my next heartbeat. Like I would lay in bed at night, and I know that you have no control over this, but I would focus my mind on making sure my heart beat one more beat and that I took in one more breath. And man, it's hard to honestly like think back to those moments because they were times where it felt like I might not make it through the night. And yet, like, my mind would go to the idea that if I had one more drink in the house, if I had a little bit of that drink, I knew it calmed those symptoms down. I knew I would be able to rest, get my heart rate back down and steady and feel better about it. And the shallow, quick breathing would go away. And it just like for me, I think those were symptoms of anxiety. Like I don't think I had any like clinically diagnosed heart condition or things like that, but it was truly just how anxiety presented itself to me. And in that detox period, the hours and days um, after coming off a long stretch of drinking. But man, it's hard to think back on right now, and quite honestly, like those were the moments of hell. I don't know if that's the same for you, but I think of all the situations, it's just like that come down, that detox period was just absolutely the worst.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's anxiety comes with, I think, again, I speak for in generally like people, what I see or what I've heard, right? What we've been through, we've heard quite a bit of other people's stories, especially from rehab and AA and stuff. But the anxiety level without the AFib or heart issues is there, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, I chalked a lot of that up to definitely anxiety. I mean, huge anxiety, right? My heart is dropping from a 46 to a 160, 180, right? I'm living at a 160 range for
Jeez.
almost a year. And, when I got out of the hospital that second time, it was kind of the same routine. We're in the emergency room, they talked about it, and, it, here's your medication. So at that point, I'm like, oh shit, I really need to take my medication.
Got to get back on it.
Right. They give you the pamphlets to, for alcohol stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Um, I don't really recall them ever saying in there, like, especially when I left from work, because I walked out of work and I'd left a meeting and I was going to the hospital and I got out to my car. I knew what it was. I knew my AFib, right? I settled it down. I know I just need a fucking drink. I
Yeah.
knew that in my
Yeah.
head. I need a drink and this will
Yep.
calm down.
God.
And then the rehab on site where I was working EHS and they come out and they stop me, they give me an aspirin and now boom,
Yep.
I'm off in the ambulance, right? They did the
Yep.
right thing.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that because
Oh,
I know you worked at a place that had like a very robust like
hmm.
safety standard and program. So they did call the ambulance for you.
Yeah, they did. And they got him there and pretty much talked me into going. I could have refused, but there's
Hmm.
so much coming at you and so much going through my head
Yeah.
and it just sucks because you're not telling anybody the truth, man. They're
Right.
trying to help you. They're
Right.
trying to help you,
Right.
right? You're going through this and you're not telling them, "Hey, I'm an alcoholic and I just need a drink," or right? You're just going, "I don't know what's wrong. I have AFib and now I'm
Yeah.
blaming it on the AFib."
Yep.
And
Yeah, it's a crazy excuse, and it's ridiculous what excuses we will grasp for and grab onto and
hmm.
point to. It's just. I mean, for me, it was everything under the sun except for alcohol. Even though the root of all of my issues were whenever I was drunk or whenever I had been drinking. Had the thought entered your mind at all without you speaking it that you might have a problem with alcohol at that point with the second one, like in the parking lot with your EH&S personnel around you?
Yeah, so I get in the ambulance, and the guys, they're trying to put some fluids in my arm, and it's
Yeah.
bouncing around, and he gives me one stick with it, right? He messes up, and then we're not too far from the hospital. And anyway, he messes up and he puts a tape over it, and then the other guy's talking to him, wants to do it again,
Ugh,
and
that's like my
he
nightmare when it's what you're
yeah,
describing.
yeah, and I'm just like, and he's like, "Oh, should we give him a shot?" And they're talking, and I'm sitting there thinking, okay, this is twice. I, I I'm gonna go down to the hospital. Like they're gonna talk to me, and I just got to get it out. And like I know what's causing this.
Mhm.
Um, did I know at that point that I was like the full blown? And I don't even know. This is a weird term, alcoholic, and this is
Mhm.
you know what I'm talking about. But do I have a problem with alcohol? Yeah, maybe, especially if I have this issue, right? But am I a like full blown alcoholic and need the help? I'm probably okay, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and again,
You're
like you
telling
must have had
yourself that.
confidence. Yes, and
Yeah,
you especially, like you kicked hard drugs. Like you
right,
had a track record of walking away from something that was a problem in your life.
right. And going to the hospital, and I get there, and I don't want to put any blame on any hospital. I love it; it's great, and there's only so much they can do. But they that sense of comfort that they give you, right? Because
Yeah.
you're in this situation, you need help. They know, hey, we're checking
Yep.
your vitals, you see your AFib. Um, Not that I don't think that I told them. No, I know that I didn't tell them like this is part of my detox that happens. Like,
Yeah. Right.
this is
Right.
normal. Um, have you been taking your medication? No, I stopped taking. It doesn't work, so they refill it for you. You know, whatever. Yeah, and then that sense of comfort they give you, uh, and they get you back under stable condition, and all of a sudden it's kind of okay, right? It's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, this we fixed it. We're good.
Yep.
Which is just mind blowing looking back at this,
Oh,
that that's okay.
yeah. It's incredible how fast we, I could forget. I would work through the detox. I would have those difficult conversations with Alyssa, with other family members about what the hell was going on. Why was I struggling so much? And then you would clear that time, and a few days, a week, 2 weeks later, all of a sudden that thought would come into your mind, and you're like, I want to drink again. And you would enter into that thought pattern where you would convince yourself, and I would say to myself, this time's going to be different. And it never was. And it's just incredible how poor of a memory we have as alcoholics.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, how many times have we said, "Oh, this time will be different," or "Yeah, I've got this." You know, I've got this plan.
I'll
Like,
only drink
okay,
a few. Yep.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going to be in control this time.
right.
So what
And
was that? Oh, go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say, at that point, I got out of the hospital at that point, and I think at that point I realized, okay, you need to get control of this, right?
Hmm.
You have a health issue, you like your alcohol, you're not going to give it up, so you need to get control. Like, this isn't a big deal. And, for a while, I think again, foggy things, right? Life goes on, right? I got to go back to
Hmm.
work, go do all the things. And, I slowed down a little bit and didn't drink as much, but I was still drinking, and my wife knew my condition, right, and knew when I had to slow down. And I think that's really where that, as that started to get away and progress again, was that's where the
Hmm.
hiding comes in. That's where how come you just had a glass of wine and you got this buzz, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's that line that I think I cross in there of starting to hide it, really lie about it. Because before that, it's like, hey, you're a functioning alcoholic, right?
Yep.
You were shit faced, and you're like, yes, I am, and everybody's.
Yep.
I don't want to say proud of that, but that's like kind of that proud thing you have, right?
Yeah. Yep. You weren't seemingly suffering consequences, but outside of your health one. But if I'm hearing this right, it was after that second scare that Jen, your wife, started paying attention to your drinking purely out of fear for your own health.
Right.
It,
Exactly. And you know, kind of calling it out as it was, and I
mm-hmm.
didn't want to admit it to her, and I didn't want to,
Yep.
man, yeah. You always think back. You could have stopped it. You could have taken care of this. You had the chances, right? We've all had our chances,
Mm-hmm.
plenty.
Yep.
And I just continued to. It got worse. She could see it. Do you have a buzz? How come you have a buzz? Why are you so, right? And I flat out just lied to her.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest. It was at that time. It was to me that was no other option. Was just to tell her,
Yeah.
no, I'm not drinking. Well,
Yeah.
you have to be a freaking idiot to think that somebody doesn't know what you're drinking, right?
Yeah.
And seclude
Exactly.
myself to just hear and her, and she could see it, right? And it became a point where, I didn't realize it, but her her mental state of what's wrong with them. Is it this health issue? Or, she
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that I was drinking as much as I was. And
Mm-hmm.
the tolerance level of being a full blown alcoholic, you can have way more alcohol than somebody else and still be
Mm-hmm.
right. That's what you need, right? You've built up to that. So it that last time there is when it really, I think, progressively got worse, and I hit it, and I almost feel like I hit it for myself. Hit it for myself.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
hide the bottles, hide the stuff I have to drink, because I honestly, I couldn't tell you how much I was drinking a day. I, I
Right.
I don't know how much I drank a day. Sometimes how I got it, it was always there. It was always
Yeah.
something somewhere. Whether you're sucking the bottom of an empty vodka bottle,
Mm-hmm.
out of the garage, out of a trash can, who knows, right? You
Yep.
always have it, and
Would you would you find bottles or cans stored around that surprise you? Where it's like, oh shit, I don't remember
oh
putting that
yeah,
one there. Yeah.
oh yeah, it's
It's a terrible feeling because with in my situation, at least with my hiding and manipulation, it was like I'm lucky. What the thought process that I would have is I'm lucky I found it and not Alyssa, because I wouldn't have been able to answer for
what do you say?
this. Yeah, there's nothing to say. Why is this stuff behind the ski gear way in the back of the basement? Well, I don't like we didn't have parties. We didn't host people because
Right.
I was isolating, and I was such a just unknown about where I would be drunk, sober, and even if I was sober, like where my mentality would be. I be terribly irritable? So we didn't have people over. We didn't go out and do things. So
Right.
the cans, the empties, the full ones behind the ski gear, like there's really no justification for them being there outside of me stashing away and hiding them.
Right. And that's the same kind of thing we had. I mean, yeah, I found empties. I mean, ironically enough, I don't think I find very many that were hid that were actually full, right? I mean, all of
Yeah,
a sudden,
right.
all of a sudden, the liquor that you had everywhere all the time is you don't have it. It's not out in the open. It's I
Yep.
looking back, at this very moment, I would realize that right now, as I used to have liquor everywhere, and you open a cabinet and there's some Crown, some vodka, but
Yeah.
eventually, as I started getting heavier into my drinking, is that stuff
Hmm.
wasn't just around, or
Yeah.
if it was, uh, shoot, it was gone, right? You were drinking it,
Right. Right.
but
No, if we bought like a 6 or a 12 pack of something, the worst ones were kind of the variety packs because we would put them in the refrigerator and then I would drink them alone. And then I would go, crap, I have to replace
Hmm.
the exact kind for kind with those variety packs. And sometimes those variety packs were seasonal. Yes. So then it's like, oh crap, I'm driving all over town trying to find the place that is still carrying this specific variety pack so that I can replace it in the refrigerator and make it look like I hadn't been drinking them alone. And I would play it off where it's like, yeah, maybe I would have one or two after night, so after work, so there would be a slow volume reduction. But in reality, it was like, God, I was going through full cases when it seemed like we were only going through a few. Like I was cycling full cases to make it seem like only a few disappeared out of the refrigerator.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Or
that's
when you go to the store and there's a point you realize when you buy one, you need to buy two because that second one needs to replace the first one because
exactly,
you're gonna drink that.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like it's painful. It's painful to admit. But you know, I think the value of doing the work that we have done and in opening up to others and of making like real and genuine connections is that you realize like I can say that I've never admitted that variety pack thing to anyone, but like I know it's not crazy because I've heard other people say they've done it
Yeah. Yeah.
before. And it's just like, I mean, man, at AA the other day, we had a topic where it was like someone who was new to the program started sharing, and you know, it's like the pink cloud thing, like they're just feeling really great, but then they start talking about all the things that they're not doing and just like the insane behavior and the insane activity. And it's like we're looking around the room and everyone's laughing because everyone connects with it and remembers doing it themselves. You know, whether it's this
Right.
person that is fresh off of 30 days in recovery or the person sitting, you know, two people down from them that's got 42 years. It's like we all did it we all did this like gross behavior that in a lot of ways led to intense shame. And by my experience, by working the steps, by facing that fear of judgment, you're just able to kind of like cleanse yourself of that and like flush it out. Um, so yeah, the isolation though, man, it was that the beginning of the end for you?
Well, so we'll go back to my 45th birthday, yeah. So
Yes.
that's that next time that leading up to that, yeah, it was down. It was all these things, right? It was drinking every chance you get. I couldn't sleep
Mhm.
more 2 hours a night, right? Get up,
Yeah.
have to,
Yep.
my AFib's just rocking me, man. I know at this point, Kyle, leading up to this is, I'm having weird dreams. I'm hallucinating, right? I
Hmm.
am, something is fucking wrong. And I'm
Hmm.
going to have to make a choice at some point here that is one way or the other. Like I'm either going to get myself out of this or I'm going to die doing it.
Hmm.
And it just started sinking in. And, I told myself 45th birthday, man. And, I got number 22 tattooed on my wrist, and that's my number 22, right? So 2022, 45 years old, I told myself I'm going to make that change. And I, I've been doing this for 45 years, not 45 years, you're 45, but you know what I'm saying, right? 45
Hmm.
years old. I've been drinking. I've done the drugs. I've been in trouble. All these things is like, okay, that's my mark. That's my thing, right?
Hmm.
And, leading up to that, I think, I think it's probably I don't want to say a normal thing, but you set this goal of this and that's a huge task. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I felt like I drank myself into the prior of this is going to be it thing, right?
Hmm.
And it's a little fuzzy in there. And we came up. And as it was getting closer, I realized I need to detox. I need to I need to come down off this.
Yep.
And this is for real. And I don't have much of a plan. I don't have a plan.
Right.
I don't have the
Yep.
tools. I don't have the nothing other than, hey, I'm just gonna quit, Why not?
Yeah.
Right? Right? Why not? I could put the last 40 years say behind me. Like I've done it. I've been there. You name it. I've tried it. Everything, right? Like this is my time. And I I gotten sick, and this is the COVID thing, right? Um, so you'd be the first person right here, right now that I've told this to, but and I know it's probably been done out there, and it was an easy escape. Was I had a COVID test, yeah,
Hmm.
and I knew it wasn't COVID, and it wasn't COVID, but I had saved some tests that were positive, and that's what I use for my work, right? Is I needed to detox. I'm not doing well.
Hmm.
I'm here's my proof, right? I test positive. This is it.
Yep. Got to stay home.
Gotta stay home and not gonna work, right? I'm just gonna, which there's two things to that. I'm isolating myself even further before this
Right.
instance. Looking back, I
Right.
realize I'm isolating myself even further to hit this goal, right?
Hmm.
Um, and the other side is I'm gonna detox this. This is gonna be rough
Hmm.
with my health, my heart condition. I've done this several times throughout these last few years where I don't
Hmm.
drink, right? And no good things come out of it. And looking back and knowing what I know now, I'm surprised I survived as many detoxes as I did,
I know. Same.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I was the first few days there, Jen, I was sick, right? From
Hmm.
COVID. And, uh, but that was a lie. I mean, flat out. But
Hmm.
it was going to help me in a situation. So your mind is, hey, this is good. This is okay. It's okay to, you know. And but my detox was bad, man. It was like no other.
And you were just home because Jen was going to work. You were just home alone.
Yeah, yeah. Like say,
Did you
kids are
have?
growing and everybody,
Yeah. Right. Did you build any like plan or structure into your day, or were you just like, I'm gonna just sit through this and grind it out?
I'm gonna sit through this. I'm gonna grind it out. I'm gonna watch shows. I'm gonna just chill. I'm
Yep.
not gonna work. I'm just gonna sit here and sweat it out, shake and throw up,
Yep. Yep.
and again, I can't sleep, right?
Yeah.
So the first couple days, I decided I was gonna like taper, yeah, like
Hmm.
just have a couple
Just a few.
little,
Just a
just a
few
few,
drinks to bump you up.
and I'm not gonna go to the store. There was some wine, some whatever's in the house, not much, right?
Hmm.
And I tried to stay away from it, man. Holy crap, I tried to stay away from it. Just
Yeah.
not even, right? But I mean, anything and everything that we could get I could get my hands on. Sorry, just because the detox was a bitch.
Yep.
I was not doing well,
Yeah.
and my AFib wouldn't let me sleep. And
Hmm.
I think so. I want to say we'd have to look at it. That my birthday that was on a Thursday, the 22nd, um, and this week leading up to it, I was home and I wasn't able to sleep for 3 days,
Hmm.
and I'm detoxing. I have AFib, no alcohol, and yeah, I'm up all night. The Jen, she's working, she's doing her thing, but she came home, she went to bed, and I really couldn't eat. My stomach was upset, right?
Hmm.
The whole 9 yards. And I'm watching TV all night. She gets up in the morning. I kind of turn it off and tell her, oh yeah, I couldn't really sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, man, something's up here. And I think that Wednesday night leading into that, I was laying there and I started, now at the time I really didn't know, but I could hear music. I could hear music
Yeah.
playing. And then the kids were in the backyard and they had some of the people I knew from work that were out there. And, this is a work night. It's 2 a.m. The music's too loud. I'm getting irritated to the maximum, right? And at one point,
Yeah. And you're
yeah.
laying on the couch while this
Well,
apparent party is going on.
I'm laying in bed, yeah, with
You're in bed. Yeah.
yeah,
While this
yeah.
apparent party is going on.
Party's going on, windows cracked open, right? Got the fan going, but I can hear the
Hmm.
music. They're gonna piss off the neighbors. And I asked Jen, I'm like, why? Like, she wakes up at some point, and I'm like, will you text them and tell them to turn that music down? Like, this is ridiculous, right? And I didn't get out of bed. I didn't go check.
Hmm.
I didn't want to go confrontational because I mean, I am irritated to
Yeah.
no end, right? I'm
Yep.
not somebody that you want to talk to right now.
Yeah.
and I remember kind of next morning, I said, did you text him? She goes, yeah, I texted him. She said that he was in bed at 9 o'clock. And I'm like, fuck, so I'm playing this in my head and I'm thinking, and I heard these people vividly talking about work and I knew their
Hmm.
voices and their names. And at one
Hmm.
point they, they left right before I got up and walked out, looked out the back and seen nobody was there. And I'm like, it's only fucking 6 o'clock. They got to go to work. Why? It didn't register, right?
Yeah.
And at one point, I'm walking back to the bedroom there. I want to say at like 6 in the morning, 5:30, 6 in the morning, and I could hear the music going again. And I'm like, God. And I got a computer sitting there, and I'm like, well, the computer's playing music, and so I'm listening. There's no speakers on this computer. The computer's not on. And I
Oh.
go to the back of it and I can hear the fan going and I'm listening in there. I can very faintly hear it. Uh, that was brutal, man. That, Jen got up. She went to work that Wednesday. She's like, well, you need to go to the hospital. You need to go to the doctor. I'm like, no, no, no. It's my birthday. I'm not going to the hospital on my birthday.
Hmm.
And she goes to work out and she comes back to get ready, but she leaves to work out. And I'd laid back in bed and I hear music. I hear radio station. I hear people talking about the weather. I hear them talking about uh, different things going on, right? And I'm trying to listen to identify what station they're playing. How can I track them down, right? What area? Because this is happening. This isn't just me hallucinating this music, right? This is a talk show, man. They're
You
playing
were
music.
you were convinced.
I was convinced. And then, they would play a song and the song would only be a portion of it, not the full song. And I'm like, now that's not real. But then they're
Yeah.
talking and they're talking like, hey, about the weather and the day. And, you know, and I tried really hard to focus on trying to find that station. What station was I listening to? Where was it at? What country? What something? Yeah. Um, and Jen left and went to work out and I heard somebody come in the house and I could hear him walking
Like
around.
door open. What? Oh man.
Yeah, and yeah, this gave me some chicken skin there thinking about that. But
Yeah.
it, I boy, I guess enough consciousness. I felt at this point I'm pretty much losing my sense of everything. Right,
Yeah.
I'm detoxing hard. I'm sick. I'm not healthy, uh, and I thought. And I'm kind of hollered out. Was it one of the kids? Like, I don't know, no. And I could hear people walking around and doors opening and shutting. And I could hear talking. And I was like, really? At some point I thought, man, I'm going to grab my gun. I don't feel safe. And at
Mm-hmm.
that moment, Kyle, I had enough awareness that something was going on to
Mm-hmm.
go get my gun
Yeah.
to be safe from whoever I'm hearing out there is not the option. Like that's,
You're right.
um, but I get up, I go out, I look around. No, nobody's there, right? And I'm just like, what the fuck is going on? Like
Yep.
something in my head. And I know Jen's coming home from workout pretty soon. So I go back to, I go back and I lay back in bed, and she comes and talks to me. She's very concerned. Uh, I let her know I'm fine, what have you. Now, this is like 3 days of no sleep. Yeah. No
Mm-hmm.
sleep, no alcohol, no food, right? Uh, uh, my AFib's really, really bad. Really. It's breathing, everything, laying down. I can't lay down for very long. I'm restless. It's not good. And she leaves for work, and I remember getting up a couple times, and right, I want to drink. I do, but I also want to fight
Yep.
this, man. I can win this. I got
Yep.
this. I am this
Mm-hmm.
close, right?
Right.
And I remember getting up and walking back out, and it seemed to me I found this is crazy, man. I found out that the fans running in the bathroom or the fan in the window was causing this frequency where I could hear this radio station, this music. It was going.
Oh my
It's
God.
going. I can hear. I can't. I'm plugging my ears, laying there in bed. I can't sleep. I've got aphid. I'm detox. So all these things are coming, and I walk by and I hear these gals talking and stuff, and I'm like, oh man, it must be my neighbors. How can I hear it out of my bathroom, right? It must be coming through the fan in there. And then one of them says my name, and yeah, she said, you're not listening to me. I don't know why you're not listening to me. And these two ladies start yelling and going, and I'm trying to talk to them, right? And they're just kind of they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And this all these things kind of leading up to this, man. Something's. I thought honestly that I was really off my rocker. I was, but something
Mm-hmm.
mentally, my brain. So I make it through that day of just again being awake, watching TV, trying to just focus off of what's going on with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so Friday, the day after my birthday, Jen came home at night. I'm still sick, right? I still on that same path. Um, and I told her I'm not going to the hospital on my birthday. And I thought to
Mm-hmm.
myself, one more day, right? One more day, day 4 or 5. I lost track. I'll start feeling better, right? I'm going to get over this hump. And anyway, the next morning she goes to work out, same thing. She comes home. Um, I think I asked her for some food. I start to feel hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked her for a sandwich, sausage, something or other. She brought it to me. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but I knew I had to eat something. I had to eat something light,
Mm-hmm.
But she convinced me at that point that, the whole thing over, you have insurance, that whole story, right? Of you got
Mm-hmm.
insurance, it won't cost much. You need to go to the hospital. You're not well. You're not better. COVID's really kicking my ass, quotes, right?
Right. Yeah. The
Man.
whole time you knew.
Yeah. And I went to the hospital. She took me to the hospital, and I was like, in my head, I'm thinking, this is it, man. This
Yep.
is, this is, this is it. They're gonna, they're gonna see what situation I'm in, and I'm detoxing, and this is gonna come out, and this is gonna be the whole thing, and then it's gonna be off my chest, and I can go back home, and we can get through this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we get there, and Jen can go in there because of I have to wear a mask. She can't go in with me, so
Yep.
she's very concerned. Me lying
Mm-hmm.
to her, me doing all the things that I've done to her for the last year or 2 years going through this has
Mm-hmm.
really, really messed with her, right? Terrible shit. And she's a wreck. They take me in, they admit me, they check me. They got me hooked up to vitals and fluids, and right, I need all these things. And they come in and tell me that they're admitting me. They're taking me up to the third floor. Can't remember what floor. To cardiology.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, what's going on? Why is the why are we going up there? Why are they admitting me? Like, I just need some fluids. Like, I'm fine. Like, oh, the doctor will be with you to talk with you. And yeah, so they come in, talk to me. So we're admitting you up to there. You're having some issues with your heart. We'll talk to you up there. We'll get you. So I let Jen know this, right? And of course, now she's really freaking out. And they take me up there, get me hooked up in the machine, put me in the cardiology ward, right? I still have no idea what's going on.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we need to run some more tests. And they come in and I can't remember all these teams. Or they check your heart, they scan it, right?
Hmm.
Echogram, I think, something like that. And anyway, Jen ends up getting there eventually. The doctors start to come in, and one of them comes in and she sits down and pulls her chair up really close to me, kind of right up to me, and says, "You have less than 25% of your heart ejection fractions, and
Jeez.
less than 25% of your heart is functioning. And if you don't stop drinking, you're going to die." Well, there it is, right?
Yep.
Uh, I guess looking back, I knew something, and I knew this was, and I've been in and out a couple times, and to have that reality come to you, man, that's a scare in itself, right?
Yeah.
Um, I spent 6 days maybe in the hospital of given medication that would make my blood pressure go up and my heart rate drop, or my
Hmm.
heart rate go up and my blood pressure drop, to find that balance and then flush me out, try new drugs, right? To get me on a balance, and of course they talked about getting help at that time, and that was September 23rd of 2022. Yeah.
And was Jen a part of these conversations with the alcoholism and seeking help, or were you able to hide that from her
No,
and,
she
and
was
kind
part
of
of the
have her?
conversation and what the doctor was
Okay.
saying, and she was there, so she knew it, but somehow I convinced that okay, yes, I understand, yes, I get it, I'm good, I'm taking care of it, right?
Yep.
And
Again, you have a history of
right,
kicking a drug problem, drug
right.
habit.
Which, in my mind, that's way worse than alcohol, right? That's the
Yeah, right?
perception. That's the
It's
perception is
illegal, man.
it's illegal. It's a legal drug.
Yeah,
You
why
get
would
hooked on drugs, you're right. I kicked meth, coke, all that shit. Yeah,
Yep,
no problem.
right.
I know, kind of rambling on a little bit with that, but that was the realization eye opener. Jen knows. Again, it's a health issue. It's not
Yep,
just the
right.
alcohol. Okay,
All right.
it's a health issue on top of the alcohol. So, are you a full blown alcoholic at that point?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not. Maybe you still have
Mm-hmm.
control. You can't drink right now, but you just need to get yourself better, and then you need to watch your alcohol consumption. That's the
Yeah. But
conversation.
did
That's the conversation,
in
Kyle. Yeah.
in the hospital that time, did the seed at least get planted? The seed of the question of what, well, am I an alcoholic? When that nurse pulled her chair up close to you and put her face right in your face. Like, did it sink in, or were you still in denial or thinking that you could do it by yourself?
The answer to that should be yes. But the answer
Right?
to the
I
answer should
know.
be yes, Kyle. That was it, man. It sucked in, and
I
I
know.
got my shit together, and I didn't drink ever again. Right.
Right?
But honestly,
Because, well, because if that happened, starting September 23rd, you and I didn't meet in North Point until May 15th of 2023. So
correct.
you had 7 or 8 more months of fighting this. So what did that look like?
Hell,
Yeah. How
absolute,
so?
absolute hell, Kyle. I So Jen knows, right? So I need to get active.
Yep.
You need to eat the all these terms, man. The cardiology diet, right? Where the food
Hmm.
intake, all these things, right? You have heart failure. Did I
Yeah.
say that earlier?
25%.
Less than
25%.
25%.
Less than, man.
Heart failure, sir. Congestive heart failure at age 45 years old. The youngest patient they've seen on that ward
Jeez.
with this condition. That is a fucking wake up call, man.
Yeah.
Right there. But
But it still
on that
wasn't
same
enough.
note, hey, we're good at what we do, right? And it
Yep.
didn't it
Exactly.
convinced me, yes, I need to get better. Yes,
Hmm.
I need to exercise. I need to watch my alcohol consumption. Um, I'm not quite sure at that point that Jen was accepting of the fact of that I was a full blown alcoholic that couldn't
Hmm.
quit drinking. I don't know that.
Right.
I don't think so. Because we talked about this and I went down to, man, this is the best I'm doing. I got e-bikes, right? I'm riding my e-bike. I'm
Hmm.
walking around the block. I couldn't walk around the block without
Wow.
losing my breath, without my heart going, without, right?
Wow.
And I had to take baby steps to start bringing myself back. But the wild thing is, man, I started to do it.
Hmm.
I wasn't drinking. I was doing it. In a roundabout, really screwed up way for my 45th birthday to stop drinking and take care of myself.
Hmm.
And I've done all this shit for this long, right? Now it's time for
Hmm.
me, right? Uh, and then you've talked about this several times in your podcast. You don't drink sometimes necessarily, or when you think about your relapse or drinking, you do it at your highs, not your lows,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That
I,
right there.
yep. It's it is a maddening aspect of the disease is how your high highs can carry you off into a bender just as much as your um most desperate and utter lows.
But you get a taste of that, yeah. Like right
Yep.
now, right? I'm excited. I'm well, happy. But at that point
Hmm.
in my life, when you get that feeling, you get a taste of that. You're like, yes, right?
Yeah.
Hell yeah! Look at me, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you do a shave, get a nice haircut. You feel good,
Yep.
right? You're
Start taking care of yourself.
yeah. Start taking care of yourself.
Yep.
Your arms out the window, your car windows down, and you're feeling the air, and you're
Yep.
like, yes. It's sad but true, man. It's a
Yep.
taste. It's a taste right there. And I had that and I got it. And I don't recall necessarily at what point, because again, the conversation like with me and Jen was, well, this isn't forever, right? Just take care of yourself. And then we go to the doctor and they're like, hey, yeah, if you do, you convince them into telling you, if you do get this under control, sure, you could have a glass or two of wine,
Hmm.
once or
Hmm.
twice a week, the whole thing, right?
Yep.
You can do that. In my mind, I'm thinking, see, yeah. And Jen can do that. She's a normie. She can have
Yep.
one drink in 6 months, right?
Right.
And be fine.
Yeah.
And so then that gets implanted in your head, man. And you
Yep.
think, yes.
I can get there.
Mm-hmm. And then,
Yep.
eventually it's like, hey, we're going to, a winery. We really got into going to wineries, and what a
Hmm.
blast that was, right? Traveling, going all over and wine tasting and doing the stuff. And, I know one point we went and see my mom and Payette. And, of course, everybody's pissed off at me, but I didn't tell them my heart issue and the heart failure and almost
Hmm.
died, whatever. And we left there, and we had an allotment to pick up, and we just thought about this, man. This is wild. Back roads, we drove the back roads, got to this winery, picked her allotment, and she was like, "Hey, you've done really well, and stuff. A glass of red wine, like a Malbec or something, right?" And I'm like,
Hmm.
"Yeah, we're picking this up. It's a nice, lovely, crisp day. Uh,
Yep.
have a glass of wine." And I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, right? You know me now. It was good. It was
Yeah.
fresh. I could taste it.
Yep.
It was nice. I got this warm feel in my body, and
Hmm.
and it felt good. And I think it was just one, maybe a little more, but man, I can tell you right now, I wanted another glass. I
Right.
wanted the rest of
Yeah.
her glass. I wanted to,
Yep.
the little overboard, but I want to lick the inside of that glass. Like that's
Yep.
that feeling hit and that craving went right back to, but we got in the car and I had this little feeling, not a buzz, right? At
Mm-hmm.
this point, as you know, as an alcoholic, you drink a fifth of vodka, you're fine, right? Everything's great.
Mm-hmm.
There's this one glass of wine, and I'm getting in the car, and we're driving back, and it feels good. And I thought to myself, see, a glass of wine makes you feel good. You get a little tiny little wine buzz. This is what it could be
Yep.
like. Little
Right.
tiny taste of it. Um, And then it just went downhill, man. I felt
Mm-hmm.
better, and then I started, having a little more drinks, fucking hiding shit again,
Yep.
buying extra. Uh, we went on a trip to Mexico, and it was with Jen's boss took us down there. And this is about a month ish, maybe less before going into rehab, and all inclusive resort, right? And I wouldn't say I was full blown back into it.
Yeah.
I went and got a checkup, and I'll add this in. I think like Aprilish, I went back to the cardiologist, got a checkup, and this is a huge key point too, because then they told me 50% ejection fraction is what they've seen, which they thought it would
Progress.
be a long time. Progress.
Yep.
So
Progress.
even with me drinking a little bit, but
It was
doing the
coming back.
exercise, taking the medication, it's coming back. So see, it's
Yep.
okay, right?
Right.
It's
Yep.
I can do this. I can still drink. I can, just have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
And that was good news to hear. Uh, yeah, I left that appointment and had a drink, pretty solid dose of some vodka. Celebrate, right?
Right.
Celebrate.
Right.
Um, yeah, and then honestly, just I tried to fight it. I knew started to set in right there, man. We had this big trip to Mexico planned, and I know at one point Jen told me, she's like, when we go down there, just please don't embarrass me. Don't, you're my
Mm-hmm.
boss. And I'll tell you something. I went down there, all exclusive resort, all the tequila, all the food, that you could want.
Mm-hmm.
I maintained myself. I went down there and I did drink, and I did drink probably 2, 3, maybe 4 times as anybody else.
Yep.
But I maintained myself. I composed. I did well. I actually enjoyed it a little bit, right? Somewhat fresh off in that few months of being better, right? I was
Right.
healthier.
Right.
Um, which should have been triggered your point to look how bad you were, the alcohol. Now look without the alcohol, look where you got in that short
Right.
time. They were thinking it would be a year or more before I could get my ejection fractions
Right.
back up,
Right.
right?
But it's like we're always looking for that tiny crack of an excuse
Mm-hmm.
to inject alcohol back into our lives, regardless of how ridiculous of an excuse that it is or that it may be. And during my like long stints of sobriety, when I was white knuckling it or doing it without any program or work, it was like I never looked at it as a thing that I would do day in and day out for the rest of my life. I always looked at it from like, well, this is needed right now until I get better and I can figure out how to bring alcohol back into my life. And then I would have like a couple weeks of sort of quote unquote normal drinking. But man, I was so focused on it and obsessive over it because I didn't want to start drinking again and get really bad so that it would be like, see, obviously I can't have alcohol. I was like, I got to prove to myself and to others that like bringing alcohol back into my life won't lead to utter destruction. But
Right.
then like 2 weeks later, it's leading to the hiding, manipulating, drinking more than I really should. And and not telling others. And it's like you find yourself in that worse situation than you even like decided to become sober over in the first place.
Right. You think you got it. People think you got it.
Yep.
But you're right. All you do is focus, man, on that next drink or taking it this one or sipping it or
Yep.
what level can I stay at? And when you're
Yes.
out, people are having fun, you're at a party, man, you're
You
all you're
blend
doing
in.
is yeah,
Can I ask you something about Mexico?
yeah.
I'm assuming this is a place where you've got numerous bars, right? Um, would you would you like peel off from the main group to like, oh, I got to run back to the room or I got to go to the bathroom and hit up a bar where people couldn't see you? Or were you doing all your drinking in front of the group that you were there with? Because you had mentioned you were consuming more than anyone else, but were you starting to inject that hiding aspect of it even on that trip?
You know, I don't think it was as, I mean, there was small, like they had the drinks in the room, right? I had some
Like on the
beers.
wall
Like in the
or
fridge, you had like,
in the fridge? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
every day you had like so many beers, right?
Yep,
Well,
yep,
I'd come in and open up a beer and if I went back to the room to go to the bathroom or something, right, and I would chug a beer, right?
yep. Right.
What it, and I say this lightly, it wasn't really hiding it, but somehow, some way, which uh, yeah, we could talk about that, but I would go off like, oh, Jen's getting ready, right? I would just like, okay, well, I'm gonna go down to the beach, check it out, and I go down to the beach and
Yep,
I'd walk over to the bar and get a drink, right? So
yep. It was
I
an
wasn't
opportunity.
running around hiding, drinking as much as I thought that I would be.
Yeah.
But I actually, honestly, maintained myself pretty well.
Yep. Hmm.
When they come back to get us a drink, yes, I'd have another drink, and I was just kind of
Hmm.
that. I don't know how to explain, like an even keel, right? Just a flat line of
Yep.
I consume more because I drink more. Like they wouldn't get a drink every time, but if they come
Right.
around again, I would get another drink, right? Or
Yep.
but honestly, I when we went down there, there's a
I mean,
little
you're hyper aware of like the attention on your drinking and
but full
consumption on that
focus,
trip.
man, full
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
focus.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't easy to not just get carried away. I was
Right.
in
Yep.
full focus to maintain my drinking, not let my wife down, not embarrass myself. Alcohol down there. I mean, you go to the resort, you tip into things. You can have whatever you want, right?
Hmm.
Whenever you want. And I didn't have like a bottle that I bought and took to the room. I didn't
Hmm.
None of that. It was just we're walking by the stand, get a drink. Oh, let's try this one. Um, just kind of a constant drink, which I honestly surprised myself
Yeah.
I didn't I don't remember things right. I just
Yep.
did a maintain. Now I had to have alcohol. I had to have it.
Hmm.
I would say looking back, right? Um, I want to touch on something about that though too. When I say I don't know how I pulled through that, we talked a little bit in rehab about faith and God and our beliefs and where we're at, and I think we kind of talked about I don't. It's not that I don't believe, but it's not something that is a everyday practice into me, and I've really worked on that. Um,
Hmm.
Before we went, I to Mexico. I knew there's a point where I went to bed a couple nights before we left, and that's toward the end of that bender that I'd ran through, right, and I was in
Hmm.
really bad shape, worst shape I had been mentally. Okay, my
Yep.
body felt better, but my mental state was I was I feel like I was on the verge of completely losing it, and I'm
Hmm.
talking asylum. I in my mind mentally was starting to lose grip on everything.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty dark situation in bed a couple nights before that where I I dream a lot. I dream every night. So at first I feel like it was a dream. Um, and I don't know how in depth we go with this, but I I laid there in bed and I crossed over into uh, I don't know, another the other side, the
Mhm.
this little bubble that sits outside of us. I went outside into that. I was drawn into that. I had people coming to talk to me, telling me that I needed to come with them.
Mhm.
Um, that it was the best choice, and when I refused to go with them, um, I remember at one point they had said they were gonna take Jen, and that would force me to come with them.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't know these people that were there, but I mean they were very comforting.
Mhm.
Um, one individual talked me into at least going over and checking it out, just for a few minutes, and I did. I went over and checked it out, and again, man, I don't know what it was, uh, where it was, my mental state, of course, hallucinate, the whole thing. But I
Mhm.
went, I went to a place, that was a whole night adventure. And
And were these like human figures and forms that you were interacting with, or was it some other kind of like manifestation?
it was part human form and part spiritual, like that,
Hmm.
like they're just
Yeah.
what do you want to call that? Their being, their presence, right? I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
not ghostly type, but kind of sort of ish.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll tell you, man, that that right there was, yeah, I felt like I felt like I had a choice to come back or not from that,
Hmm.
and I believe to this day that I made the choice to come back from this, and um, that was it for me. I believe that. Uh,
So I remember hearing that story in the lunchroom or cafeteria
yeah,
in North Point. And we were sitting together with a few other people around the table. And I can't remember who went first. And what I mean by that, who shared or opened up about their experience or story, whether it was you or whether it was our shared friend Brody. But from an outside observer, myself, who has never had such an experience, the incredible similarities between your two experiences in this exact situation. So yours was laying in bed one night as you were going through this physical and mental kind of like journey and struggle. Brody's was when one of the times he had OD'd. And sitting there and hearing your guys' story was just, it was hard to describe, um, because I was going through my own acceptance and kind of transition from a spiritual and a faith standpoint. And then the question of like, well, what happens after this life? What occurs when you die? Kind of in all honesty was something that I've just sort of let pass by in my thought process, like especially in rehab. I didn't want to concern myself with it. I didn't want to think about it very much. But to sit there and hear you two share and the commonalities between these stories. And you two didn't know each other. You didn't have similar backgrounds or experiences. And it was just, it's hard to just explain away. And this is a realm where our language fails us. And I think you saw it with your answer to the question about like, were these human forms? It's like, it's very difficult to describe. And I've run into that in my own spiritual journey, and with the journey that we've gone on with Lucy. It's like the words aren't there to really describe what the experience was like, or really describe like the transformation that went on inside me from stemming from these experiences. And when you do figure out kind of how to chunk the words together, it sounds ridiculous in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
but also it doesn't do it justice. It doesn't do the experience justice. So like while I don't have that same sort of like this transitional realm or this situation where you can seemingly choose to go or to stay. It's like, I think I've connected with that spiritual experience where it's just like, my words fail me. Our words fail me. Our culture, like the words that we use as a culture and society fail us. We just don't talk about, or we don't have those experiences. So it was like a really weird bonding moment where it's like, I get you, I don't get it. Like you kind of sound crazy, but like I get it. I get what you're saying. And yeah, I don't know. It's what I'm thinking about right now is again where language has largely failed me at this point to really articulate where I'm at in my head. But like in going through everything with Lucy and, spending really this last year focused on kind of like integrating that grief and that loss into our life and then healing from it and trying to grow from it. I'm in a weird spot where it's like I've lost I've lost this fear. I think I've lost this fear of death. And that doesn't mean I'm ready to go, nor do I
Right.
want to go right now. And if faced with this situation, I would be incredibly sorrowful about not getting to see Grant grow up, about not getting to spend more time in furthering my relationship with Alyssa. But there is this weird thing with losing a child, especially where it's just like I am comforted by the fact that I genuinely know and can sense and can feel that she's going to be waiting. And, I don't know why that is. It's like if there's just this feeling that I've kind of absorbed and had in my life, in our life since her loss. But again, it's just like, it's one of those things that language just doesn't do it. And it shows the incredible power of coming together with people that share in an experience where you can say that sitting around a table and someone else can chime up and basically say like, hey man, I've been there too. Here's how it happened for me.
Right.
And yeah, it's just wild how often like the language that we use day in and day out as a culture in society, just like they kind of drive us into ways of thinking and behaving And when you have these experiences that are so profound, um, you feel like you can't connect, and you feel like you can't articulate yourself, and you do feel a little bit crazy sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. That I could never, somebody else telling that story, right? Nobody will be able to see or feel like I felt the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
The crazy thing too, I wasn't scared. I was having
Mm-hmm.
a conversation with them. We understood, and I don't remember detailed, but they were comforting.
Mm-hmm.
I went into this other, I don't know, place, realm, right? And I got a little taste of it. And, one thing it told me is if you come here, you're going to be stuck here forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this in between kind of, I don't know how to explain it, man, but I know at one point I looked out the side of my bed and cause I didn't know if this was real, not real. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm holding hands off the bed with this lady. And I pretty much convinced them that I'm not going with them. This is not my time. And I wasn't scared. And she said, well, it's going to be okay. So I get through this, kind of get through the next day. We got stuff. We're getting ready to go to Mexico. I am an absolute, I need to maintain my shit. Going to Mexico is a huge deal. So I've never been out of the country, right? I haven't
Mm-hmm.
traveled much. And, the next night, I think we left like on a Tuesday. And the next night on a Sunday, again, I'd kind of been coming down off of this elite detox to kind of get ready for this trip. And I went to sleep and I woke up and I opened my eyes, I woke up and I'm right back in the same place with these people. And I remember being a little scared right then at that point,
Mm-hmm.
right? It wasn't as easy that first little moment because I thought, oh shit, this is
Do I
it.
have the choice this time?
Right. Like this is
Yeah.
it. And they talked about, this is so wild, man. They talked about what we talked about the night before. And again, I can't remember the details, right? They talked about the experience and that they actually thanked me and we kind of I was laughing, like we were chuckling about what had happened and that I could make a movie or a book about this and that this is an experience and thanking each other for this. Yeah. And then it was just like a goodbye and they were gone. And when I was in Mexico, I don't know how this all happened and how I kept my composure and I was an absolute mind wreck.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I did, I did pray to God that night in a sincere way after this. And
Mm-hmm.
I asked to help guide me and that I have this trip coming up and that this could be, I felt like at this point what was happening going down to this place, I knew I probably couldn't control myself, but
Mm-hmm.
I needed to keep my composure, control myself. And I don't think I really asked for help. I just asked for guidance and that I'm going to get on a path to get myself better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's it. And you want to know, my stomach was hurting, Kyle. My whole body is it's just fucked up. It's
Mm-hmm.
bad. And I woke up that Monday morning and this was a Sunday night. And this is a couple days of this, whatever you want to call it, was happening. Yeah. And I woke up that Monday morning and I felt good. I felt like I got this. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember thinking, boy, it couldn't have been this prayer that made me just almost a night and day difference of how I felt. Blows my mind. So when I say I don't know, I do know, right? I prayed for this help. And we went on this trip to Mexico. It was fine. We came back. I remember on the plane ride back, man, I was really needing a drink though, right? I didn't
Mm-hmm.
fully indulge and didn't go off the deep end. I maintained is what I did. But
Mm-hmm.
I knew I needed help. And when I came back, I pretty much fell apart again. Sick, mentally, everything, right? And I had a Friday off. I think it was a Friday off from work. And Jen was concerned about me. I mean, she had been very worried about me for a long time. And I woke up that Friday morning and I don't honestly remember a damn thing about what happened. I got a bottle of Malbec wine, really nice, expensive from one of the wineries, and I drank it. I don't recall. I don't recall this whole, I drank it all. And at some point she came home from lunch from work because she couldn't get a hold of me.
Mm-hmm.
And, she was always talking to me, always checking in, right? Always rightfully so concerned.
Yep.
And she came home and I think I was on the couch, completely out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Completely like she's talking to me. I am a wreck. I know this is it. I have to go get myself into rehab and get help. I have to get help. At one point, she called my mom. My mom came over, and that's a spotty relationship, not very close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she sat there and looked at me and she's like, "You're an idiot. And yeah, you better do something about this right now. You're going to lose everything. You're going to lose Jen." And I know this, right? But now I'm having these people tell me, and everybody, they know. I
Mm-hmm.
am, I am screwed. I'm done. This is it. And, my mom said that and then she left and Jen didn't want me to stay alone by myself. Right. But my mom was like, yeah, man, you're going to lose everything again. Because when I got out of jail at 19, 20 years old ish, when all that shit happened back then, I walked out of there with the clothes I had on. I walked out with nothing.
Mm-hmm.
No, my kids, no place to stay, man, no car, no job, no nothing, not a, maybe like $8 at that point. That stuff all goes through my head and reflected back. Like at this point, I haven't lost everything, but I am so close to
Mm-hmm.
death, uh, losing everything. Uh, just that's it. The end is here, one way or another. This is it.
Well, and you've kind of hinted at it, but did you feel like you were losing yourself?
Oh, I was gone. Myself, who I
Yeah.
was, my beliefs, I couldn't think straight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the sad part is, we've talked about this in where Rehab is we have similarities in our life and our lifestyle and the alcoholism and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? But also, I was able to get up and go to work, you know,
Right. Hold
6
it
a.m.,
together.
6 a.m., man.
Mm-hmm.
Get up and go to work, 6 to 4:30. Now, there's days I walked into work where I could barely walk to get there. I didn't have any of it to me, right? But
Mm-hmm.
we maintained and pulled this shit off to the last option is
Mm-hmm.
at this point it's death or go get help. And to be honest with you, I wasn't scared of either one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, let me say that again. The death part and what I've gone through and all the things that have happened, I wasn't scared of that, but I knew it wasn't my time, right? But I guess I would say I was scared to get the help to go into rehab, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
stigma. That's the at this age of my life.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people know. I'm holding my shit together enough for people, yeah, you're an alcoholic. Yeah, he drinks a lot. But mentally, Kyle, I didn't know who I was anymore, man. I didn't know what.
Mm-hmm.
I knew enough to just maintain my everyday, get my ass up, get to work, get a job, pay your bills, drink some alcohol, get that done, feel like this, right? Maintain your shit. This are the little things you got to do. You've
Mm-hmm.
mentioned several times your house projects, the things around, shit ain't getting done.
Mm-hmm.
Stupid stuff. But at that point, man, that was it. I gotta check myself into rehab, and I gotta get the help, and that's period.
So I want to leave people at that point right now. I want to do a follow-up with you because that loss of self, that unknown with like, who am I? Who is Jeramie? All of the loss of just that sense that you were mentally even stable and there. Like we hit that point at the same time together. And so I want to wrap this one up and then come back again together again for, entering into rehab and then what you've done. Because we stay in touch. I'm pretty sure you haven't had any like spiritual transition of the realm type dreams since entering rehab. So what has changed? I really want to get into that. You have been a pillar of my recovery. We'll get into it the next time, but you and I met on day one and we clicked, man. I don't know why. I don't know what it was, but when we met and when we talked, we were in it together, and it has been extremely humbling and an honor to be a part of your journey and to have you be a part of mine over these last 18 months. And I just love and cherish our friendship and relationship.
Me as
So
well, sir.
thank you for sharing what you did. That is hard to dredge those experiences up, because to reflect back on the sense of loss of self that we were going through is difficult beyond words. And so thank you for sharing what you did. And again, you have been such a beacon of light and such a mentor to me. You are one day further along in this journey than me. And so
No, it's
yeah,
great with
just
you too, man. It's the same way with you, brother. We talk
yeah.
sometimes every morning. The time difference
Mm-hmm.
here. Yeah, I appreciate, cherish everything that we went through together, and you're an inspiration and a pillar to me as well, man. And we made this as part of our plan that we would, maybe not quite like
Yes, we
this
did.
talk as
Right.
we would get out, right? Part
Right.
of our plan was every
Yep.
Friday, right? We were going to meet
Yep.
up, and it didn't
But
quite
then you
work out.
moved.
Well,
No,
but
it sounds like we're making excuses, Jeramie. we don't do that anymore. No,
no.
no, it's been, it's one of those things. It's like you can plan, but you have to adapt, and you don't control everything. So,
For sure.
yeah, with that, love you lots, and
Love you too, brother.
we'll be setting up a follow up part two to
I'm
this.
excited, man. Yeah.
We're gonna leave the listeners hanging here. So, all the best. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with others or give us a rating on your channel of choice. My hope is that my story can help others in their struggles with addiction or any other aspects of life that they feel could be bettered. You can follow us on social media at Chapter 3 Stigma on Instagram and YouTube. I cannot solve your problems for you, but I can listen. If you want to reach out with a message through one of those channels, I will respond and let you know that you are not alone. All the best, you are loved, and life is worth every struggle and bit of suffering you have to endure. Until next time, all the best.